Hi guys, so we are doing the book review for Paradise in Gaza by Niq Mhlongo. This is a 5-star. This book is so good, guys. I'm going to need you guys to read this book. This book is too good. Okay, so, the 411 on the story. So there's this family, the husband is from this village, and he marries 2 wives, and the son disappears, and the mother dies, and there's like a whole lot of things that's going on, right? And I think one of the most significant things in the story is the drought that happens in the village, and it lasts so long, right? And I'm trying not to give you guys spoilers because if I tell you why the drought was significant, then I'm definitely going to give you the spoiler. So I'm not going to do that. First things first, it has short chapters, guys. Like, it has short chapters. Yes, granted, there are a lot of chapters, but it has such short chapters, which means it becomes so easy to read, and it keeps getting you hooked up to want to read more and more and more and more and more. So that's one of my favorite things about the book. Another thing that I really loved was the writing style. It is so descriptive. Like, you guys, I can't tell you how descriptive it is. Like, I'm gonna read like sort of like a line, just literally one of the first few lines in the book, on chapter 1, right, where it says, listen to this: the blue skies above, the breathtaking greens of the forest, and the blackish color of the far-off brooding mountains were all pleasing to Mpisa's eyes. The sloping land and the boulders that lay on the hills sparked off many speculations in his mind. From the window, he stared at the passing scenery, right? So, my point is, throughout the entire book, you get to live in the setting of the book wherever it was posed, because the author is so descriptive about the surroundings, about the things that happen that are connected to the surroundings or relative to the surroundings. It is so descriptive, and it's so amazing that it's so descriptive, because it almost like gets you into a little world of its own. Like, you literally disappear from your own world and go to Gaza, right? And so some of the themes obviously are grief. So like I said, he loses one of the main characters. Mpisana loses his mother at the beginning of the novel, and then he loses his son. I'm just gonna leave it there because there's a whole story there. There are a lot of characters. There are people dying a lot in the book. There are people dying from civil wars. There are people dying from the apartheid era, the apartheid government. There are people dying from mob killings. There's just a lot of grief, and there's obviously your racial themes as well. So your race theory is all in there as well, and because it is set like pre-1994, so the Afrikaner people are taking over people's lands, and there is also the spiritual and ancestry theme as well, where now these people have taken over these lands, but people's sort of ancestors are buried there, and they need to get in touch, because what if the drought is because they can't get in touch with their ancestors, so it's things like that. There's a lot of superstitions that happen in Gaza. Like, okay, so I'm a traditional healer, so I believe some of those things, I'm just gonna leave it there. But there's a lot of things that are like, your folklores and old tales and myths that you hear a lot, that people in this village live by. Like, things like the certain parts, you can't wear the color red by the mountain, because the mountain's eyes are red, and then it wouldn't see you as its descendant and stuff like that, which are so great, because it sort of gives you this feeling of like warm homey feeling of getting in touch with, like, a part of your roots as an African person, and like, a part of your history, and a part of like the things that you probably like hear in folklores, or hear your grandparents just like yap about all the time, and now you're reading them in a book, and you're like, oh, actually, so a lot of people actually knew this. Like, I thought it was just like a blind, So it's really amazing to read all of those. And that was another plus for me. I think one of the most beautiful things that were so beautifully written about in this book was the wife's journey, her spiritual journey. I don't want to pronounce her name wrong. I think it's Ntombazi. The guys, oh. Yes, Ntombazi. I hope I pronounced it right. Gemosotho, so yeah, Zulu words and Hausa words are a bit tricky for me. So Ntombazi went on a spiritual journey, and it was escalated by losing her son, right? So her son went missing, right? So it was escalated by losing her son, and then there's that crossroads of mental health and spirituality. Ne? I've actually written an article about this, right? Because then, yes, she has postpartum depression, but also she has to, go through the spiritual journey where she needs to go and twasa. So there's like that merge of like your topics of mental health as well, with your spiritual journeys as well. So eventually she does end up going and starting her journey. Her journey takes almost 10 years, guys. And I was like, I remember when I read that line, like that she had been gone for almost 10 years. I closed the book and I was like, I am so grateful for my ancestors for not making me go through that for 10 years, because I wouldn't have survived. But also, hopefully, it's because I did agree to accept my calling as soon as I knew I needed to. Because I was like, 10 years gone. Oh, yeah, Twasa. Yo, guys, our parents, our bloodlines, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers have gone through a lot. Our great-grandparents, our great-grandfathers have gone through a lot. 10 years, guys. And because like a lot of it is attributed to witchcraft, like there's so much going on. But the nice thing is, in this book, it's like all those things that we used to hear about from our grandparents about how it was during apartheid and how it was when you were a person of their ancestors, and now there's this missionaries from the US. In the book it happens, there's this missionaries from the US that come and like bring Christianity into this, and bring this picture of white Jesus in Kanyisa's home, and like this, there's a lot going on, and this Christians attribute Kanyisa's son's vitiligo to something else, to like her sinning and being a person that worships like the dead and whatnot. And it's just like, but also now you think about it and you're like, what if your son has vitiligo because of the fact that you aren't able to get hold with your ancestors because they're buried in that white man's farm, so it's like there's a lot of things that you think about, right? Like the vitiligo could just be the after effects of the drought because there was so much sun, and maybe your son's skin health was just like really deteriorating. Like, so there's a lot of intersectionality with how people lived their lives back then, that has to do with your religion, your race, and obviously climate action as well, because droughts and floods don't just come out of nowhere, guys. We know this. Yeah, and all of those things, like how poverty looks in this book. And oh my goodness, guys, it just makes you wonder how worse it is out there, because let's be honest, these things are still happening in the world that we live in right now. There are still people that are being murdered in farms. There are still people that lend what's the word, what's the R word for it? Is it restitution? I don't remember the R word. But the land issue as well. Like, these people went to court and they basically were like, guys, we have evidence that our forefathers are buried in that land and we've lived in that land for years and that's our land. Do you know what the judge says, guys? He says, you guys aren't civilized enough to know that land belongs to you because you're black. Like, I wanted to rip out that page. But the thing is, that's what used to happen. You were not civilized enough to name this place Gaza. In fact, the farmer named it after Theodore Gaza something, who was a Greek, what, whose African daisies the Gazanians are named after. And I'm like, that's stupid. Like, just listen to the people that have been on this land for a long time, since forever. So all I'm saying is, this is an amazing book. Please get it. 5-star rating.